Last year was a disaster for Carvana. Their stock price crashed, their dealer's license was at risk in a number of states, and they lost a lot, and I mean a lot of money. And yesterday, Carvana released their Q4 and 2022 earnings, and I listened to the earnings call so that you don't have to. So let's dig in, shall we? Now, it's actually Carvana's 10th birthday, which is something that I found interesting. Not sure exactly why it's interesting, but it is. And to celebrate their 10th birthday, Carvana reported pretty horrendous numbers. First and foremost, Carvana saw a decline in retail sales for the first time in 9 years, with larger losses compared to 2021. And it's important to remember that in the context of Carvana, whenever we talk about larger losses, this is because of the fact that in the 10-year lifespan of Carvana, they have never been profitable. In fact, over the course of the last 10 years, they've only had one profitable quarter, and that was back in 2021. So whenever we talk about 2022 having larger losses, that's because of the fact that 2021 also experienced large losses, despite the fact that all things considered, 2021 was a really great year for Carvana. Retail units sold decreased by 3% to 412,296 units. Revenue increased by 6% and was $13.6 billion. During the earnings call, Carvana really drove home the point that revenue and market share for the company increased for the 9th consecutive year. Total number of markets that Carvana is in and total car vending machine count has also increased. But gross profit per unit declined by quite a bit, and their gross profit was on par with what we saw back in 2019 and 2020, and was at $3,022 per car, a decrease from $4,537 per car in 2021. As for the fourth quarter of 2022, retail units sold plummeted by 23% compared to Q4 of 2021, and revenue in Q4 was $2.837 billion, which was a decrease of 24% year over year. And as we know from the car market as a whole, the decline in performance comes from a few key factors. Number one is just a general decrease in car demand. There has been a decrease in car demand across the board due to a wide variety of factors, including inflation, cost of living, the economy, car costs rising, and so much more. But even more impactful to Carvana's bottom line is the fact that car prices are simply going down. Carvana's increase in performance that we saw in 2021 was due to, of course, an increase in demand, but it was also due to the absolute explosion in used car prices. As a result, Carvana could sell their cars for a higher price and their margin increased quite a bit, which you can see right here in this graph provided by Carvana. Profit margin per vehicle skyrocketed in 2021, but of course that wasn't sustainable long term, and now profit margin is declining as the cost of cars are going down. Carvana CEO Ernie Garcia III did say that he does expect for car profit margin to increase back to 2021 numbers, but I'm a bit skeptical. The reality is car prices are not going up, they are going down, and so if Carvana wants to increase their profit margin by that amount, they are going to have to decrease their expenses by quite a lot, and that's something that is going to take a long time to achieve. The declining profit margin is leaving less money in Carvana's pocket whenever they sell a car, and as a result, they are experiencing billions of dollars in losses. As a result, Carvana lost a whopping $806 million in Q4 of 2022 compared to $89 million in Q4 of 2021, and they lost $1.6 billion throughout the entire year of 2022 compared to only $135 million in 2021. This performance is significantly worse than what analysts were predicting for 2022 and Q4. These numbers are just completely staggering, and it is a little bit funny because during the earnings call, these numbers were completely skated over. There was no emphasis to the degree of debt and losses, though I suppose I can't really blame them. I would probably skate over them too if I was in Carvana's shoes. Carvana's biggest issue, other than declining margin, is debt. They currently have over $8 billion in debt and are expected to run through over $2 billion more in the next 2 years. When asked about this debt, Carvana stated that they simply need to rework their balance sheet and they need to make a conscious effort and aggressive effort to decrease this debt. And these same Carvana executives did state that they should or are hoping to be able to do this without requiring additional capital, but if push comes to shove, they can raise capital through a variety of different means if they need to do so. And that raising this capital certainly isn't off the table. And when asked how Carvana would go about raising capital, the only real example that they gave was their real estate assets and the potential of possibly liquidating those assets in an effort to get more cash to pay off their debt. Currently, Carvana has about $2 billion in real estate. This is mostly in the form of car vending machines and service centers. $1 billion of this is within Carvana itself, and the other $1 billion in real estate is with ADESA, which is the company that Carvana acquired in a multi-billion-dollar deal last year. But ultimately, the name of the game for Carvana, at least whenever it comes to lowering their debt, isn't going to be raising capital. Instead, it's going to be conserving cash and cutting expenses. At least that's what Carvana's saying. And the way that Carvana plans to do this is by essentially cutting inventory. Last year, Carvana reduced their inventory by 27% in Q4. They also reduced their advertising costs by 26%. And Carvana continues to plan to thin out inventory, cut their expenses, and they theorize that this will help them survive. But there is some skepticism revolving this theory. But this will be good news for the overall car market because as Carvana continues to liquidate inventory, these cars are flooding the used car market at a cheaper than normal price, and as a result, this will cause car prices to go down even more, which is great news. Carvana has in recent days blamed their poor situation on an ill-timed acquisition of ADESA, paired with the shifting car market that, in the words of Carvana, could not have been predicted. And to be honest, of all of the things that Carvana has said recently in anticipation of their Q4 and 2022 earnings, this is probably the statement that bothers me the most. Because this change in car market is something that absolutely could have been predicted. In fact, it's something that so many people have been predicting essentially since the moment that car prices started to increase back in the summer of 2021. I don't feel as though it took a genius to realize and predict that the car prices that we saw throughout 2021 and the beginning of 2022 wasn't going to be sustainable long term, and it was definitely a short-term circumstance that was eventually going to go away. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video about Ford and their absolutely horrific 2022 performance. And Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, basically owned up to the poor earnings, not really blaming the market, but blamed inefficiencies within the Ford organization. Jim Farley even went as far as to say things like he was embarrassed, he was frustrated, and it was unacceptable the performance that Ford had last year. I can really respect a CEO that says, yeah, we screwed up, we had a poor year, and here's how we plan to fix this moving forward. And that's exactly what Jim Farley with Ford did. And this is something that I have so much more respect for from a leadership and CEO perspective compared to what Carvana and Ernie Garcia III is saying, which is essentially, yeah, we had a really bad year, but it was market conditions that were out of our control. I just feel as though it's a bit of a cop-out, especially in this situation where the circumstance was absolutely predictable and it could have been planned for at least to a degree. And I feel as though this response leaves consumers and investors with a bit of a bad taste in their mouth. All in all though, 2023 will be a big year for Carvana. They are nearing their 3-month expiration on the debt agreement that creditors went into at the end of last year. So if Carvana is going to be filing for bankruptcy, they're probably going to be doing it sooner than later. Carvana has to improve their debt situation or else they simply will not survive. And I believe that if Carvana wants to do this, they have to get their act together from a systems, processes, and reputation standpoint. Because let's face it, as things stand today, those 3 things do not look that great for the company. 2022 was a horrible year for Carvana, but let's see if they can make 2023 a better one. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video.